Founding era. This is 1973 to 1983. What made hip-hop catch fire was the mix of energy from Black, Puerto Rican, and Caribbean communities. They brought oral traditions, funk grooves, soul rhythms, salsa energy, and sound system culture from Jamaica, and blended them into something completely new. This era wasn't about protecting anything polished, it was about holding on to dignity in chaos. When redlining and expressways tore neighborhoods apart, turntables stitched them back together, DJ Kool Herc kicked it all off in 1973 by flipping records back and forth to extend the breaks. His merry-go-round technique stretched beats like elastic. It gave dancers time to go wild, and it gave the Bronx something it actually wanted to cheer for. Breakbeats from artists like James Brown and the Incredible Bongo Band suddenly became gold. This was the blueprint. Herc's sound system didn't just make noise, it shifted the atmosphere. Then came Grandmaster Flash, who basically turned turntables into instruments. The guy figured out how to cut, scratch, and juggle records like some kind of sonic surgeon. His quick mix theory wasn't just smart, it made everything sound like it belonged together. And that slip mat, it wasn't decoration, it let him move vinyl like it was a joystick. He made chaos sound like choreography. MCs weren't really rappers at first, they were hype men with style and rhythm, shouting over the beats to keep the crowd alive. Coke La Rock was the first to really work the mic, tossing out call and response lines that made people feel like they were part of the act. That vibe caught on quick, and soon guys like Melly Mel were building full-on rhymes with messages behind them. It wasn't just throw your hands in the air, it started being listen to this. Recording was tricky early on. Hip-hop lived at parties, not in studios. But in 1979, labels started to catch on. Sugar Hill Records and Enjoy Records jumped in and used live bands to recreate the party feel since sampling didn't exist yet. That's how the Sugar Hill Gang dropped Rapper's Delight, the first track to make serious waves. It wasn't perfect, and Big Bank Hank caught heat for using rhymes from Grandmaster Caz without credit. But it worked. It proved people would actually buy this stuff. Melly Mel leveled up with The Message in 1982. That track took hip-hop from party anthem to protest song. Meanwhile, Africa Bambaataa was busy showing everyone that this wasn't just music. It was a movement. His Zulu Nation wrapped hip-hop in 4 elements: DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti. He dropped Planet Rock and brought electronic sounds into the mix, turning hip-hop into something you could dance to on a spaceship. Even the dancers had a revolution. B-boys and B-girls spun, flipped, and battled on cardboard like the floor owed them money. Crews like Rocksteady made breakdancing a real art, and graffiti, it became the paintbrush of the unheard. Kids turned subway cars into rolling galleries, tagging names like they were signing a declaration. By 1983, hip-hop had gone international. Films like Wild Style broadcast the Bronx to the world. The movement exploded past neighborhoods and into global culture. Even with the money drama, the shady contracts, and the fight for credit, the founding era built the whole house. The Golden Age. This is 1984 to 1989. New York stayed at the center, but hip-hop was starting to leak into the cracks of the map. Long Island, New Jersey, even the West Coast, catching wind of what was bubbling in the boroughs. By now, hip-hop had traded its party shoes for a sharper edge. Everything got smarter, faster, and louder. Reagan's policies didn't exactly leave parades behind. Poverty and mass incarceration kept communities boxed in, but that only sharpened the message. The music got more serious, more layered, and way more versatile. Sampling changed everything. With machines like the EMU SP1200 and Akai MPC60, producers could chop records into puzzle pieces and glue them back into something wild. The Bomb Squad stacked samples like a hoarder with a purpose. Funk, soul, and rock got twisted into dense, chaotic beats. The Roland TR-808 became the engine, thumping through tracks with that signature bass. Marley Marl's studio work, basically blueprints for an entire coast. MCs weren't just spitting lines anymore, they were crafting full-on lyrical geometry. Rakim didn't just rhyme, he glided through bars with internal schemes that sounded effortless. KRS-One brought the lecture hall to the block, his rhymes punched with philosophy and urgency. LL Cool J had swagger for days, and at 16, he was already making tracks that shook the whole industry. Public Enemy blasted onto the scene with a sound like a riot in a stereo. Chuck D's voice sounded like it carried weight, because it did. And Flavor Flav, a walking siren that made sure nobody tuned out. Run DMC made rap look industrial. Their style was all leather and Adidas, and they dragged Aerosmith into the mix to make sure the suburbs couldn't ignore them. Slick Rick, meanwhile, was in a storytelling lane all his own. British accent, eye patch, and a delivery so smooth, it sounded like bedtime stories if bedtime included robberies and broken hearts. Big Daddy Kane threw rapid-fire rhymes like darts, laced in velvet and gold. He could battle and ballroom dance in the same breath. He even ghost wrote for Biz Markie, whose offbeat humor and raw charm made tracks like Just a Friend strangely irresistible. Salt-N-Pepa proved women had the mic too, blending attitude with dance tracks that hit hard. Roxanne Shante tore through rivals in freestyle battles before most rappers figured out how to keep tempo. Schoolie D in Philly was laying down grimy street tales that pointed straight toward gangsta rap. And the Beastie Boys, white kids from New York who crashed the party and made License to Ill the first rap album to top the Billboard 200. Live shows were now full productions, choreography, hype, and booming music. It wasn't just music, it was spectacle. Meanwhile, graffiti kept painting the culture loud and large, and breakdancing still spun its way across cardboard. Even if the spotlight shifted, fashion went gold, rope and Kangol, Adidas, and black shades. You could hear where someone stood in hip-hop just by looking at their sneakers. And while everything grew, so did the conflict. The Bridge War split the Bronx and Queens over who birthed hip-hop. Scott La Rock's death showed the dangers weren't just on the records, but that pain pushed artists like KRS-One to build something stronger. The Golden Age didn't just kick down the door, it held it open. By the way, if you guys want to subscribe, I'm gonna be posting every day. Thanks. Anyways, the Coastal Wars. This is 1990 to 1995. This was when hip-hop stopped being just music and started feeling like a battlefield. From the start of the 90s to the middle of the decade, the genre hit an artistic high and an emotional low. New York dug deep into its lyrical roots, stacking rhymes like bricks in a fortress, while Los Angeles rolled through with G-Funk, smooth bass lines, and gangsta cool. It wasn't just music, it was a coast-to-coast standoff where every track felt like a challenge. On the East Coast, lyricism hit another gear. Nas came through with Illmatic, spitting bars so vivid you could practically see Queensbridge in grayscale. DJ Premier, Pete Rock, and Q-Tip laid beats that gave the album its cinematic texture, and Nas's verses turned everyday struggle into poetry. At the same time, Biggie was mixing street tales with a radio-ready shine. Ready to Die had everything: grit, humor, swagger, and Biggie's voice could glide or punch, depending on what the verse called for. It was all too real, and that's why it hit. Wu-Tang Clan moved like a swarm, each member sharp in their own way. Their debut made Staten Island sound like a kung fu dojo full of verbal assassins. RZA's beats? Dusty and perfect. Their business plan changed the game, letting each member ink solo deals without breaking the group. Meanwhile, the West was running its own playbook. Dr. Dre's The Chronic exploded with thick synths and slow-rolling funk. G-Funk didn't just knock, it strolled in, lit a blunt, and rewrote the vibe. Snoop Dogg floated over those beats with a drawl that made Long Beach sound laid back, even when he was rapping about the wildest stuff. Doggy Style dropped and instantly dominated. Slick, smooth, and dangerous. Tupac brought the fire, the pain, and the drama. One minute it was I Get Around, the next it was Dear Mama, and each time he made it feel personal. His albums showed every side: activist, lover, warrior, poet. Ice Cube was still tearing through verses like they owed him money. He jumped from NWA into solo work that hit harder and smarter, mixing gangsta edge with political heat. His albums weren't just loud, they had something to say. The technology backed all of it. East Coast heads chopped jazz and soul samples on the SP1200 and MPC60, building those punchy boom bap beats. West Coast producers went live with Moog synths and bass guitars, crafting that sunny menace you hear in tracks like Gin and Juice. Hype Williams turned music videos into mini movies. If a rapper had a point to make, it showed up on screen with slow motion, fisheye lenses, and West Coast skies, or subway grime. Of course, not everything was golden. The East-West rivalry, stirred by media, labels, and real street drama, got hot. Tupac's shooting in '94 ignited full-blown beef with Biggie, and by '95, the tension was everywhere, from interviews to album liners to award shows. It stopped being just competition and turned personal. Source Awards got hostile. Suge Knight called people out. People booed entire regions. It was ugly. Still, this era shaped everything that came next. It brought hip-hop into full commercial power and laid down some of the greatest albums ever made. But the cost? Too high. It made legends, and it left a scar. The commercial era. This is 1996 to 1999. This was the point when hip-hop walked straight into the boardroom wearing a shiny suit and diamond chain. The beats were cleaner, the hooks were catchier, and suddenly every mall in America had someone rapping through the speakers. New York was still flexing with Bad Boy and Rockefeller, but the South started pulling weight, with No Limit and Cat Money making a case for bass-heavy, bounce-filled bangers. And while the West Coast wasn't dominating like before, Aftermath and leftover death row heat kept LA in the game. Tupac and Biggie's murders changed everything. Their deaths weren't just tragic, they were a turning point. Labels pushed unity while doubling down on image and sales. Puffy ran with it. He took Heartbreak and turned it into platinum. No Way Out wasn't just an album, it was a campaign. Puffy's whole vibe was excess, and it worked. Mase came through with Harlem Smoothness, and Harlem World gave pop audiences something easy to ride with. It was rap with polished shoes and a soft smile. Jay-Z leveled up. Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, dropped like a corporate takeover. He took a sample from a Broadway musical and made it street. His delivery was sharp, confident, and fully aware of where he was headed. And then there was DMX, barking his way through It's Dark and Hell is Hot, dragging listeners into pain, anger, and survival. While Puffy was at the penthouse, DMX was in the basement, kicking the pipes. In the South, Master P and No Limit were releasing albums like a vending machine. The covers were loud, the beats were louder, and the fans were eating it up. Ghetto D sold in millions, even while critics raised eyebrows. Cash Money came in with Manny Fresh behind the boards, and Juvenile's back. That Ass Up shook every club from Miami to Houston. The South didn't ask for the spotlight, they snatched it. Then came Missy Elliott and Timbaland. Weirdos, in the best possible way. Super Duper Fly wasn't just futuristic, it felt like it came from another planet. Timbaland's beats bent time, and Missy's delivery broke every mold. Meanwhile, Lauryn Hill kicked in the door with The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. One moment, she was rapping with precision. The next, she was singing with soul. It hit #1, won a stack of Grammys, and made it clear hip-hop had layers nobody saw coming. The videos? Hype Williams made them look like acid trips with million-dollar budgets. Puffy and Busta Rhymes ran around inside neon dreams. Fisheye lenses were everywhere. Labels weren't just promoting music, they were selling lifestyle, fashion, and full-on branding. Sean John, Rocawear, No Limit chains, the size of license plates. This was the image era. And with all that flash came backlash. Critics said the sound got soft, the lyrics got lazy, and the bling blinded the message. People missed the grit, they missed the depth, but even with all the shine, some tracks still cut deep. Lauryn Hill, DMX, and even Jay-Z brought stories, struggles, and meaning. This era made hip-hop bigger than anyone expected. It hit every chart, every screen, and every corner of the globe. But it also left the genre at a crossroads, torn between selling dreams and telling truths. Mixtape era. This is 2000 to 2004. The early 2000s mixtape scene flipped everything on its head. Artists weren't just waiting for a label to bless them, they grabbed a stack of CDs, linked up with DJs, and hit the streets. Barbershops turned into record stores, trunk sales turned into empire, and everyone from New York to New Orleans was in on it. You could feel it in the way G-Unit took over corners in Queens, or how Lil Wayne made barbershop chatter sound like prophecy. They weren't just making noise, they were shifting the entire industry's center of gravity. The East Coast still clung to its crown, with gritty production and sample-heavy beats. But the South wasn't asking for permission. Atlanta was tossing crunk bombs into clubs thanks to producers like Lil Jon, while New Orleans put its foot down with Cash Money. Over in the Midwest, Kanye was soul-chopping his way into genius status, and Detroit had Eminem throwing lyrical grenades from every angle. Even the West Coast stayed in it, with Dre polishing his signature G-Funk to platinum shine. This era wasn't about geography, it was about momentum, and nobody wanted to slow down. Technology caught up fast. Pro Tools and Fruity Loops became every bedroom producer's dream, letting anyone with a beat and a bootleg mic record a full tape. Mixtapes were done fast, dirty, and loud. Artists were rapping over industry beats like it was sport. And guess what? That worked. DJs like Clue, Drama, and Wu Kid were the real A&Rs, breaking records without radio. The streets decided who blew up, not Billboard. And these tapes weren't just for local legends. They traveled, literally. You had folks in Chicago bumping T.I. and New Yorkers rocking with Jeezy before he even got a proper deal. The Diplomats turned Harlem into a mixtape runway, decked in pink fur, rapping like they owned the sidewalk. They basically built an empire off charisma and chaos. It didn't hurt that they were pushing tapes like Candy through every DJ booth from here to Miami. Then there was 50 Cent. After taking bullets and surviving more drama than a soap opera, he made mixtapes his battlefield. He dropped tape after tape, freestyling over whatever beat he felt like murdering that week. And it stuck. When Get Rich or Die Trying landed, it wasn't luck, it was buildup. That's the thing about this era. Nothing came out of nowhere. These artists planted seeds in basements, parking lots, and clubs, and watched empires grow. Lil Wayne didn't stop either. He was everywhere, on every beat, every tape, every conversation. His southern drawl and lyrical madness had people hitting rewind like it was a reflex. From the drought to the dedication, he laid the foundation for what came after. Same with T.I., who turned trap from slang to genre. His mixtapes weren't filler, they were declarations. By the time trap music dropped, he'd already made the case loud and clear. Joe Budden brought a different energy. He wasn't flexing chains. He was unpacking anxiety, depression, and raw thoughts. His mood music tapes gave people something they didn't know they needed. Fabolous leaned the other way, writing smooth flows over tracks made for the club and the radio. And it worked. He had hits but never lost that edge, and his mixtapes kept him in the streets. What this era had to deal with? Piracy. Bootleggers ate good, but artists didn't always see a dime. The RIAA started swinging, and DJs felt the heat. Drama even got raided down the line, but the tone was already set. This movement couldn't be undone. What started on burned CDs ended up reshaping the whole business. Mixtapes didn't just push culture, they redefined the rules. The South solidified its place. Digital distribution became a real thing. In those low-budget, raw freestyles, they ended up fueling global tours, platinum plaques, and entire careers. Blog era. This is 2005 to 2009. This was the stretch where the internet kicked the doors in and rappers started throwing their own shows from their laptops. Nobody needed a label handshake anymore. They needed a zip file, a blog cosign, and a little MySpace magic. Blogs like Nah Right, Two Dope Boys, and the smoking section became the new corner store, handing out MP3s like mixtapes in a shoebox. Artists dropped full tapes for free and still built enough buzz to fill venues. The streets didn't dry up. They just logged on. The South had the charts in a headlock. T.I. and Lil Wayne were moving serious numbers, while Houston and New Orleans added flavor. But over on the East and in the Midwest, you had this weird, thoughtful undercurrent happening. Artists like Kid Cudi and Lupe Fiasco were digging into anxiety, politics, and identity. It was like a therapy session over soul samples. Chicago and Cleveland turned into hotbeds for self-reflection. Even the West Coast, where things had been a little quiet, started finding life again with Nipsey Hussle and The Game keeping it gritty. Blogs weren't just the plug, they were the culture. Writers were tastemakers, DJs without turntables. Artists got discovered in comment sections and RSS feeds. If your mixtape made it onto DatPiff or Live mixtapes, that was validation. The lines between albums and tapes blurred hard. Free projects like So Far Gone or A Kid Named Cudi sounded cleaner than label releases. Fans didn't care if it cost nothing. They played it like it was gold. Technology made it all possible. Anyone with FL Studio and a mic from Best Buy could cook up beats that sounded like magic. Kanye pushed soul samples and orchestral flourishes. Then he flipped it completely with 808s and Heartbreak, stripped it all down, drenched it in auto-tune, and created emo rap. T-Pain had already laid that groundwork, but Kanye made vulnerability mainstream. Kid Cudi ran with that too. His debut had folks crying and vibing at the same time. Production got weird in the best way. You had boom bap purists, electronic experiments, jazzy loops, and full-on indie rock crossovers. One track sounded like it came from a club in Atlanta. The next felt like it was scored for an existential crisis. Lyrically, things went deep. Mental health, war, systemic injustice, identity. It wasn't all about money and flexing anymore. Currency rapped about weed and planes. And J. Cole told stories, like a cousin catching you up after 3 years. And then there was the fashion. Out went baggy jeans and throwbacks. This era brought in skinny denim, Bape, Supreme, shutter shades, and all kinds of streetwear. Artists didn't just sound different, they looked different. Kanye and Cudi were poster boys for the new weird. The South still held on to its tall tees and grills, but even they started mixing it up. But this era had its cracks too. Free mixtapes didn't always translate to money. Piracy was a real issue. Labels didn't know how to market this new energy, and sometimes they fought it. DJ drama got raided. Artists like Lupe Fiasco clashed with their labels, and for all the openness, misogyny still ran through too many verses. Still, the blog era changed the game. Artists didn't need permission anymore. The music got more personal, more strange, more human. Everything that came after, from streaming to SoundCloud to emo trap, owe something to these years. Trap takeover. This is 2010 to 2013. This was the era when Atlanta didn't just take the crown, it melted it down and turned it into a grill. Trap music didn't sneak into hip-hop center stage. It kicked the door open with booming 808s, machine gun hi-hats, and enough bass to rattle every trunk from Peachtree to Paris. And this wasn't just about sound. It was culture. It was fashion. It was hustle. Everything pointed back to Atlanta. Future, Gucci Mane, and T.I. weren't just artists. They were trap ambassadors. Their labels, free bands, 1017 Brick Squad, and Grand Hustle pushed the movement like it was gospel. And while Atlanta was running laps around everyone, Chicago introduced its darker cousin, drill. Chief Keef brought raw energy that felt like a soundtrack for the end times, and the whole world noticed. This was happening during a real economic mess. Recession fallout, police violence, and poverty flooded these lyrics with desperation and determination. When artists talked about the trap, they weren't just flexing, they were surviving, and they didn't need a label to tell their stories. SoundCloud and Dat Piff did the heavy lifting. Upload, post, and boom, 20,000 plays before lunch. Production turned into a science experiment. Lex Luger, Mike Will made it, and Zaytoven sculpted this wild new sound with FL Studio. Massive 808 bass lines collided with sinister synths and eerie strings. Southside and TM-88 engineered beats that sounded like action movie trailers. Future took that and layered auto-tune melodies over it like it was his therapy session. He made pain sound glossy, and it hit hard. The undisputed king of the mixtape flood. One week, he'd drop a tape. The next week, 2 more. It never stopped. Writing on the wall, Ferrari music, Trap back, it was all heat, all street, and always playing somewhere. He practically built Trap's business model on consistency and chaos. Meanwhile, Waka Flocka Flame took Lex Luger beats and yelled like the party was on fire. Flockavelli wasn't subtle, and that was the point. Then came 2 Chainz, reinvented from Players Circle and full of punchlines that could headline a comedy special. His mixtapes lit up the web, and based on a true story, turned him into a chart regular. Jeezy kept the motivation strong with tracks that felt like life lessons yelled through car windows. His mixtapes never let up either. Real is Back made sure no one forgot his place in trap royalty. Chief Keef's drill takeover came fast. Bang, Finally Rich, and viral videos turned him into a teen star with a sound that felt straight out of a war zone. Love Sosa and I Don't Like didn't just get streams, they made noise. And Meek Mill, coming from Philly, took trap energy and added breathless delivery. His Dream Chasers series built the anticipation, but Dreams and Nightmares proved he could live up to it. Trap didn't stay boxed in. It influenced EDM festivals, pop charts, and European street anthems. Everyone was remixing it. The clothes changed too. Versace, Jordans, chains, and lean stain cups became uniform. And if a video didn't have a trap house or a strip club, was it even real? Yeah, there were problems. Violence now wasn't just lyrical. Drug culture got glorified. Labels commercialized the sound, and purists whined. But trap's dominance was clear. From clubs to corners, this era laid the foundation for what came next. SoundCloud era. This is 2014 to 2017. This was the part where the music industry got caught off guard by teenagers in bedrooms with laptops, bad microphones, and emotions louder than their bass lines. No labels, no rules. Just raw uploads on a free platform and a repost button doing all the heavy lifting. SoundCloud became the wild west of rap, and the kids took over. The geography didn't matter anymore. Florida gave us X and Ski Mask. Philly brought Lil Uzi Vert. Chicago produced Juice WRLD. Atlanta had Lil Yachty. They weren't waiting on cosigns from the coast. They had followers, likes, and memes. They built their own lane, fueled by depression, drug use, and heartbreak. But they didn't whine. They screamed, crooned, and glitched through it. This wasn't a clean sound. These tracks bled distortion. Bass lines were blown out like speakers on their last legs. FL Studio was their workshop, and the beats sounded like nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Lil Pump basically yelled through a megaphone while riding a 4-wheeler off a roof, and people ate it up. The production was pure chaos, overdriven 808s, lo-fi aesthetics, an empty space that let emotions echo. Tracks like Look at Me and Gucci Gang didn't sneak into the charts. They crash landed. This was the birth of emo rap, mumble rap, and every genre hybrid the old heads warned you about. Melodic singing one moment, screaming the next. Some of it was trash, some of it was brilliant. Most of it was both. Videos looked like they were shot on toaster cameras. That was the point. Grainy visuals, anime edits, TikTok level energy before TikTok even mattered. Cole Bennett turned Lyrical Lemonade into the go-to plug. You wanted your track to blow up? Get it in front of him. The result? YouTube numbers went through the roof. And suddenly, labels started watching. Lil Uzi Vert made Heartbreak sound like a club anthem. XO Tour Life felt like a sad diary entry, dressed up as a mosh pit. Lil Yachty floated over bouncy synths with the confidence of someone who knew the rules and chose not to care. Juice WRLD poured his soul into melodies that stuck in your head and broke your heart at the same time. And X, he didn't just push boundaries. He threw them out entirely. His songs bounced from screamo to acoustic in the same tape. It wasn't all party anthems and viral hits. This era wore its pain like a badge. Artists rapped about depression, anxiety, addiction. They weren't polished. They were messy, human, and real. And it connected with a generation that was already swimming through all of that. They made vulnerability cool and marketable. Fashion got louder too. Face tattoos, colorful hair, thrifted chaos paired with luxury. Yachty rocked Nautica. Uzi wore shoulder bags and spike chokers. They looked like cartoon characters on purpose, and fans copied everything. But it wasn't all glory. Legal issues, tragic overdoses, violent ends, too many stories cut short. Critics trashed the movement, called it lazy, called it dumb. But guess what? It changed everything. DIY artists didn't need permission anymore. They needed Wi-Fi and some heartbreak. This wasn't just rap. It was a new era of self-expression, unfiltered, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Algorithm age. This is 2018 to 2021. This was when hip-hop didn't just evolve. It got eaten, shuffled, and spit out by a feed. Everything came through an algorithm. If you weren't on a playlist or a viral TikTok, you might as well have been invisible. But for the ones who cracked the code, it was superstardom at the speed of a scroll. Atlanta stayed running the game, with Lil Baby turning melodic trap into a full-blown economy. Houston gave us Megan Thee Stallion, bringing confidence and Grammy trophies with equal intensity. Brooklyn got aggressive with drill, thanks to Pop Smoke. And out west, Roddy Ricch used melodic hooks to craft radio monsters. At the same time, global scenes exploded. Latin trap, UK drill, and random viral hits from artists halfway around the planet. Genre boundaries basically stopped existing. TikTok made the rules. You wanted a hit? Make sure the first 15 seconds slap. Dance challenge? That's your rollout. Megan Savage didn't just go viral. It launched careers for influencers. Old Town Road, a track that felt like it was designed by a meme lab. Tracks had hooks made for looping, intros trimmed for swiping, and choruses built to live forever in someone's For You page. Streaming platforms weren't just music hubs, they were curators. If you landed on Spotify's Rap Caviar or Apple's New Music Daily, it was game over. Algorithms replaced A&Rs. Labels checked streaming stats before they even made phone calls. Artists like Jack Harlow blew up not because of radio play, but because the data said so. Even YouTube's trending tab had more pull than some record execs. Musically, it was a buffet. You had melodic trap with pianos and auto-tune, drill with its sliding 808s and snarling flows, rage, beats that sounded like a video game glitching out, and pop rap, polished for crossover. Playboi Carti went full punk on Whole Lotta Red, while Megan made club bangers and empowerment anthems at the same time. Lil Baby's The Bigger Picture spoke directly to the moment. Raging protests, police brutality, and community pain wrapped in street perspective. And the visuals? Either full-on blockbuster budgets or DIY TikTok. Megan's videos looked like Marvel movies. Meanwhile, Cardi fans drooled over blurry leaks and chaotic Instagram live moments. Fashion turned into a collage. Everyone wore whatever screamed "look at me." You had designer jeans next to thrifted jackets, chromed out chains, and face tats. Megan mixed HBCU vibes with high fashion. Cardi looked like he came from an anime punk universe. Pop Smoke made Gucci bucket hats feel like armor. But this era had weight too. We lost Pop Smoke, Juice WRLD, and King Von. Mental health was front and center. Rap didn't hide its scars. Artists spilled every feeling into the mic. Oversaturation was real. Everyone had a SoundCloud, a single, and a plan. And not all of them were good. Algorithms rewarded sameness. It was easy to disappear in the noise. Still, the algorithm age redefined what success looked like. It didn't matter where you came from. If the internet liked you, you won. TikTok trends, Spotify streams, YouTube drops. It was a digital survival game. But for those who played it right, it made legends. Kendrick, Drake era, two titans at the top, Kendrick Lamar and Drake, have turned rap into an arena of lyrical war, pop supremacy, and digital dominance. This isn't a friendly back and forth. It's Shakespeare with 808s. Drake's charm and melodic flexing crash straight into Kendrick's cerebral bars and surgical takedowns. The result? An era powered by tension, innovation, and a whole lot of algorithm juice. Kendrick returned with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and reminded everyone that therapy sessions can sell platinum. Then he dropped GNX and lit a fuse under the genre. Not Like Us didn't just top charts, it stomped on Drake's neck with a Compton-sized boot. His disses weren't just clever, they were cultural moments. Every line sparked a meme, a think piece, or a reaction video, and fans treated it like a season finale. Drake, of course, stayed in Billboard's living room. Honestly, Nevermind saw him flirt with house music, then For All the Dogs took it back to the familiar. Sing rapping, mood playlists, and subtweets, disguised as choruses. Slime You Out and Rich. Baby Daddy stayed glued to the charts, even while Kendrick was busy dismantling his entire brand. Still, the Toronto King held the numbers. TikTok loved both of them. Catchy hooks, meme-ready dances, short intros. This era is engineered for scrolling. You didn't need to like an artist's album. You just needed 12 seconds to go viral. That's how Megan Thee Stallion Savage and Doja Cat's Paint the Town Red climbed the charts. The songs were designed for clips, and it worked. The production got richer, weirder, and louder. Trap beats evolved into cinematic soundscapes, orchestral samples, and jazz loops lived beside rage beats and distorted 808s. Drake leaned into polished melodies, Kendrick into layered storytelling. Meanwhile, producers like Metro Boomin and Boy Wonder stitched together sonic universes. And AI, it crept in just enough to stir panic. Drake's AI Tupac stunt? Illegal and ethical mess, but pure algorithm bait. The rivalry wasn't the only show. J. Cole dropped Might Delete later, apologized mid-beef, and ducked out gracefully. Travis Scott's Utopia packed in rage, psychedelia, and mosh pit triggers. Tyler, the creator, dropped Chromacopia, dipped into jazz and trap, and dressed like a fashion-forward Wes Anderson character. And Doja Cat, she flipped between pop, rap, and chaos with face paint and viral bars. Fashion went wild. Cardi's punk goth fits, Drake's OVO gear, Megan's wigs, Tyler's golf wang. This wasn't just style, it was performance art. Every look said something. Sometimes it said, I have money and Wi-Fi, but still. Subgenres spread like wildfire. Melodic trap, rage, drill, and alt-rap battled for playlist space. Ice Spice slid in with bouncy drill pop. Yate turned rage rap into a Reddit religion. Roddy Ricch kept singing through the noise. Of course, this era had its wreckage. Takeoff's death and the mental weight of non-stop content left scars. The Kendrick-Drake feud got personal, real personal. Lines were crossed. Fans took sides like it was a playoff series. And under it all, the same algorithms pushing every move. Still, through all the noise and clout chasing, this era mattered. Rap stayed at the center of culture. The Kendrick-Drake collision proved that bars, beef, and ambition still drive the genre. And whatever comes next, it'll come from this chaos. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.